There's a road in the Andes Mountains where people forget who they are seconds before they're ripped out of existence. They don't vanish. They are erased. In March 2019, a rescue team found 17 abandoned vehicles along a 25-mile stretch. Engines still running, doors wide open, dried blood on the steering wheels, no bodies, no signs of struggle, no explanation that didn't shatter logic itself. But what they found inside the cars destroyed any possibility of rational thought. On the windshields of 9 vehicles were handwritten notes, all bearing the same sentence in different handwriting, shaky, frantic, desperate. I don't know my name. I don't know why I'm here. Something is coming. 3 weeks later, a woman was found walking naked along the highway, nearly 50 miles south, her skin torn by thorns, the soles of her feet raw and bleeding. When police approached her, she didn't speak, didn't blink. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on the horizon, as if she were still seeing something no one else could. She was taken to the hospital. Neurological exams found no trauma, no drugs, no injuries. But she didn't know her own name, didn't recognize her reflection, remembered nothing, not her childhood, not where she came from, not what had stripped her, torn her skin, and left her alive. 2 months later, she died. Sudden cardiac arrest, no identifiable cause. Doctors said her heart simply gave up. As if it had forgotten it needed to beat. Since then, 43 people have disappeared on that road. None have returned. But the notes keep appearing. Always the same sentence, always different handwriting, always the same final word. Coming. And now, drivers who pass through report something that shouldn't be possible. They forget entire stretches of the trip, lose hours, wake up behind the wheel without knowing how they got there. And when they check the rearview mirror, they swear they see someone sitting in the back seat. But when they turn their head, no one is there. Just the smell of wet earth and something rotten. This is the story of Ruta del Olvido, and it's still taking people. If you're watching this video right now, make sure to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the cases we bring here. And down in the comments, tell me, what city are you watching from? I want to know who's brave enough to follow this story all the way to the end, because what you're about to hear has no explanation. Ruta del Olvido is located in Jujuy province in northern Argentina, winding through the Andes at more than 10,500 feet above sea level. It's a narrow road, cracked asphalt slicing through barren mountains and valleys where the fog never fully lifts. Few vehicles pass through, even fewer stop. Locals don't even say its name. They call it simply that. When they need to refer to it, they point. They never look directly at it. And under no circumstances do they drive there after 4 p.m. Because that's when people start to forget. The first documented case happened in 2003. A truck driver named Esteban Ruiz was hauling cargo from Salta to San Salvador de Jujuy. He knew the route. He had driven it more than 200 times. But that afternoon, something changed. Esteban stopped at a gas station at 3:47 p.m. The attendant remembered him because he seemed confused. He asked where he was. The attendant thought it was a joke. Esteban insisted. Said he didn't remember getting onto that road. Didn't remember leaving Salta. He stared at his driver's license as if he were seeing it for the first time. The attendant suggested he rest. Esteban refused. He got back in his truck and drove off. 3 hours later, the truck was found overturned in a ravine, about 37 miles ahead. The cab was empty. No body. No blood except what had smeared across the steering wheel, where Esteban's hands had gripped so tightly that the skin tore. But what police found on the dashboard caused the case to be closed without further investigation. A sentence scrawled in blood. I am not Esteban. From that moment on, the road began devouring people systematically, not randomly, systematically, and every disappearance followed the same pattern: confusion, amnesia, and then nothing. Between 2003 and 2011, 12 people disappeared on Ruta del Olvido. 12 cases closed. 12 families without answers. 12 investigations that ended in silence because no one wanted to admit what the reports were suggesting. Those people didn't run away, didn't get lost, didn't fall into ravines. They were taken, and the way they were taken defied every rule of forensic science and human logic. The second case happened in April 2005. A family of 4, a father, mother, and 2 young children, ages 6 and 8, were driving to Tilcara, a picturesque town known for its pre-Incan ruins. They stopped to take photos at a scenic overlook called El Mirador de las Nubes, a well-known tourist spot, safe, popular, a common stop for anyone crossing the Andes. But that day, no one else was there. The silence was thick, heavy, as if the air had been drained. The mother, Claudia Vargas, took 3 photos of the landscape with her digital camera. Weeks later, police recovered the camera abandoned along the shoulder of the road, about 9 miles past the overlook. The 3 photos were still on the memory card, a disturbing sequence captured in pixels. In the first photo, the landscape, fog-covered mountains, gray sky, stark and imposing beauty. In the second photo, the same landscape. But now, in the background, a human silhouette, blurred. Impossible to identify. It shouldn't have been there. The overlook was empty, the road deserted. The figure looked as if it had emerged from nowhere, a dark stain against the gray mountains. In the third photo, the silhouette is closer, much closer, and now it's clear. It isn't a person. The proportions are wrong, the limbs too long, the body distorted, the head tilted at an angle that defies anatomy, as if the neck were made of rubber. There are no visible facial features. Just an absence where a face should be, a darkness that seems deeper than shadow. There is no fourth photo. The sequence ends abruptly, as if the camera had been dropped, or the hand holding it had been paralyzed. The family's car was found 3 days later, perfectly parked on the shoulder, doors locked from the inside, keys still in the ignition, luggage in the trunk, the children's toys in the back seat, a stuffed bear and a small wooden car, untouched. Everything in order, except for the absence of its occupants. But inside the car, on the driver's seat, there was something that should not have existed. A note, written in the father's handwriting, Marcelo Vargas. Police confirmed it by comparing old documents, letters, signatures. There was no doubt. The note read, "We are not us. Something got inside. Don't let it out." The ink was smeared in places, as if the hands that wrote it had been shaking uncontrollably. The investigation was closed in 48 hours. Official cause, voluntary vehicle abandonment. Whereabouts unknown. A convenient explanation for an inexplicable horror. No search for bodies, no organized rescue effort. And the camera? It was returned to Claudia's extended family. They deleted the photos immediately. Said they didn't want to see them. Said those images were not meant to be seen. That simply looking at them felt like a violation. But a cousin of Claudia's made copies before deleting them. In 2009, he uploaded the images to an online forum dedicated to unsolved mysteries. The photos circulated for 3 days before forum administrators removed them without explanation. Users who downloaded the files reported something disturbing. When they zoomed in on the third photo, the silhouette wasn't just closer. It was looking directly at the camera. And what should have been a face was a dark void, an absence that seemed to swallow light. And behind it, blurred in the background, there were more silhouettes. Dozens. All with the same distorted shape. Long limbs, tilted heads, all standing still, all watching, like a silent, starving audience. Claudia's cousin deleted his copies a week later. He never explained why. But in his final post on the forum, before disappearing from the internet entirely, he wrote, "I zoomed in too far. I saw the faces. They weren't faces. They were holes. His account was deleted. He was never seen online again. 3 months after that case, another disappearance. This time, a motorcyclist named Ramiro Sanchez. He was last seen in a small village called Purmamarca, filling up his bike. Witnesses said he seemed rushed, nervous. He kept asking what time it was, even though he wore a watch on his wrist that showed the time clearly. When the gas station attendant answered, 4:20 p.m., Ramiro froze, stood motionless, staring at his own watch as if the hands were lying to him, as if time itself had slipped out of alignment. Then he said something no one in that village ever forgot. "I've already passed through here 3 times. Today. But I only left home once." His eyes were wide, reflecting not just fear, but existential confusion. He got back on his motorcycle and sped off down Ruta del Olvido, as if fleeing something that was already inside him. The motorcycle was found 2 days later, lying in the middle of the road. The engine still warm as if it had been abandoned minutes earlier. The helmet was on the ground, split clean in half. But there were no signs of impact, no skid marks, no collision damage. The helmet had simply cracked, as if something had pressed outward from inside. On the gas tank, scratched in with a fingernail, human, confirmed by forensic analysis, with fragments of skin and blood still embedded, was a sentence. "I haven't been me for miles." The handwriting was jagged, desperate, as if identity itself were dissolving while the sentence was being carved. From that point on, local authorities stopped investigating, not officially, but in practice, any disappearance along that road was labeled lost in remote terrain. No search parties. No deep forensic analysis. No questions. Reports were brief. Families ignored. Because the questions led to answers no one wanted to hear. Answers that threatened the structure of reality itself. In 2008, a highway patrol officer named Gonzalo Medina was assigned to monitor Ruta del Olvido. He was a skeptic, hardened by years of mountain duty. He lasted 6 weeks. On his final day, he turned in his badge and requested an immediate transfer. Anywhere, as long as it was far from there. When asked why, he said only, "I saw what happens to the ones who stay too long. I saw what they saw before they vanished." His voice was hoarse, his eyes stripped of every trace of skepticism. Gonzalo never described what he saw, but he never drove alone again, never took empty roads. And every time someone mentioned Ruta del Olvido, he left the room, as if the name itself were contagious. He died in 2014. Heart attack, 34 years old, no history of cardiac issues. Doctors found no explanation, but before he died, he left behind a journal. His family found it under his mattress after the funeral. There was only one entry, dated from his final week of patrol. "They don't disappear. They're replaced, and what stays behind still wears the face. But the eyes are empty, because whatever was inside has already been taken, and what looks back isn't human." After Gonzalo left, the road fell silent for 3 years. A silence that wasn't peace, but a pause. A deep breath before something worse. In 2011, something changed. People didn't stop disappearing, they started coming back. Ruta del Olvido doesn't give back what it takes. It returns shells. And those shells aren't just empty. They're manifestations of the void that consumed them. The return isn't relief. It's a deeper violation. In 2011, the pattern shifted. It was no longer just abandoned vehicles and cryptic notes. Now, people were reappearing, but they weren't the same. They came back like distorted echoes of themselves, stripped of whatever makes someone human. As if their essence had been extracted, leaving only a body behind. The first documented return was Elena Rojas, a 48-year-old history teacher known for her energy and passion for teaching. She disappeared in May 2011 while driving alone along Ruta del Olvido on her way to a conference in Salta. Her car was found the next day on the shoulder of the road. Engine off, doors unlocked. On the passenger seat, a family photo torn in half. 3 days later, Elena was found. She was sitting in the middle of a public square in San Salvador de Jujuy, nearly 95 miles from where her car had been abandoned. Completely naked, motionless. Her eyes were open but unfocused, fixed on something invisible in the distance. There were no visible injuries, no signs of assault. Her skin was pale and cold, as if she had been exposed to the freezing mountain wind, but without the physical damage that exposure should have caused. When police approached her, she didn't react. Didn't speak, didn't blink. She showed no fear, no pain, no recognition. It was like looking at a statue made of flesh. At the hospital, doctors found no physical or neurological abnormalities, no trauma, no drugs, nothing. But Elena didn't know who she was. She didn't recognize her husband, her children, not even her own reflection. She couldn't form sentences, only low guttural sounds, like a wounded animal trying to communicate. Her family tried everything: intensive therapy, experimental medication, showing her photographs and videos, personal objects, childhood memories. Nothing worked. Elena was physically present, but the person she had been was gone. She spent 6 months institutionalized. Her condition didn't improve. It deteriorated. She stopped eating, stopped drinking. Her body began to fail without any detectable disease. On November 12, 2011, Elena Rojas died. Official cause: multiple organ failure. Doctors couldn't explain why her organs simply stopped functioning one by one, as if her body had forgotten how to live. But before she died, something happened. In her final days, Elena began drawing, obsessively, on anything she could find: paper, bed sheets, the hospital walls. She drew the same thing over and over: a road, and at the end of it, a silhouette. Tall, thin, arms too long, and where a face should have been, a hollow darkness that seemed to devour light. Her family burned the drawings after her death. They said they couldn't stand to look at them anymore. Elena's case was the first of many. In 2013, a young couple, Miguel and Sofia, college students backpacking through the region, disappeared while camping near Ruta del Olvido. Their tent was found intact, a campfire still warm, their backpacks, phones, and IDs left behind. 3 days later, Miguel was found wandering through the town of Humahuaca, about 43 miles from the road, also naked. Also motionless, eyes open, empty. Doctors confirmed the now familiar pattern: physically intact, mentally absent. Miguel didn't speak, didn't respond. But unlike Elena, he didn't draw. He dug, with his fingernails, with his teeth, on the hospital floor, on the walls, on his own skin, leaving deep, bleeding marks. He dug constantly, desperately, like he was trying to unearth something buried inside him. Nurses had to restrain his hands. Even then, his fingers kept moving in the air, mimicking the motion of digging. Miguel died 3 weeks later. Cause of death: extreme exhaustion. His body simply collapsed under the relentless effort of fighting something no one else could see. Sofia was never found, but in their campsite, police recovered Miguel's journal. The final entry, written the day he disappeared, read, "I'm not me, I'm what's left. And she's with them. They took her into the hole. I saw it. I saw what they do. They take the light and leave the void. I'm empty. I have to dig. I have to get it out. It's inside me. It's eating me." Authorities dismissed it as trauma-induced psychosis. Locals weren't so sure. In 2015, a team of geologists was conducting seismic research about 3 miles from Ruta del Olvido, in what they believed was a safe area. 3 days into the expedition, one of the researchers, Dr. Ricardo Peña, disappeared. His equipment was still running, his radio powered on, his tent undisturbed. 2 days later, he was found standing alone in an open field nearly 19 miles from the camp, fully clothed, dirt covering his torn clothes, as if he had crawled for miles. His eyes were open, fixed on the sky. He didn't move, didn't respond, but he was singing. A strange melody, monotonous, repetitive, no words, just dissonant notes that didn't resemble any known musical structure. Day and night, he sang. At the hospital, doctors found no physical abnormalities, no dehydration, no infection. But he stopped drinking water. A week later, he died from severe dehydration. In his final moments, he stopped singing and said one sentence in a voice witnesses described as not entirely his own. They're coming, and they're hungry, not for food, for memories, for everything that makes us us. And the song is the hymn of forgetting. Then he died. After that, the returns became more frequent. The pattern remained consistent. The person reappears, empty. Repeating one compulsive behavior, dead within weeks. And with each return, the reach of Ruta del Olvido seemed to expand. Disappearances were no longer confined to the original 25-mile stretch. They began occurring farther away, in areas once considered safe, as if the road were breathing, expanding, stretching invisible limbs outward. And with every breath, it pulled more in, not just people, but sanity itself. Ruta del Olvido isn't just a road, it's an entity, and it's expanding, not only in territory but in its ability to distort geography itself and rewrite perception. What was once a localized threat began manifesting as something invasive, subtly altering the landscape in ways that defied explanation. In 2016, the Jujuy Department of Transportation, under mounting public pressure, launched a mapping and resurfacing project for Ruta del Olvido. The goal was simple: modernize the road, improve safety, and prove that everything surrounding it was superstition, nothing more than accidents and isolated tragedies. A team of experienced surveyors and engineers was deployed with state-of-the-art equipment. They lasted less than a week. On the third day, the chief engineer, Dr. Javier Solano, reported anomalies that made no sense. GPS devices were malfunctioning intermittently. Coordinates shifted unpredictably. The total length of the road appeared to change with each measurement, stretching, shrinking, refusing to stabilize. It's like the road is elongating, he said in his final radio report, or contracting. I can't anchor a fixed reference point. The mountains don't line up. The horizon isn't stable. The next morning, Javier disappeared. His vehicle was found parked on the shoulder, engine running, doors open. On the passenger seat was his tablet, still displaying a map of Ruta del Olvido. But the map wasn't glitched. It was distorted. The road lines twisted like veins under skin, and at one point, where Javier had marked a red circle around an anomaly, there was a dark blotch, a stain that seemed to pulse. 2 days later, search teams found Javier about 6 miles from his vehicle, lying on the ground, eyes open and fixed on the sky. He didn't move, didn't respond. He was murmuring. Not words, just repetitive syllables. A low, guttural chant, as if trying to recite something he couldn't fully remember. At the hospital, doctors found nothing physically wrong. He stopped eating, stopped drinking. 4 days later, he died of severe dehydration and malnutrition. In his final moments, he stopped murmuring and said one sentence: "It moves, it breathes, and it's hungry. For us, for everything we are, and it's growing." Then he died. The resurfacing project was abandoned. Equipment left behind to rust in the fog and high-altitude sun. But the road didn't stop. Residents in nearby villages began reporting something disturbing. Ruta del Olvido seemed closer. Distances felt shorter. Areas once considered far from the road now seemed within reach. New dirt paths appeared where none had existed before, connecting the road to hidden valleys and remote terrain. In 2017, a group of experienced hunters followed one of these new trails. They never made it back together. One of them, Mateo, staggered out of the forest days later, disoriented, clothes torn, covered in dirt, and a dark, sticky substance he couldn't identify. He said the forest changed as they walked. Trees grew taller, darker, branches closing overhead like a cathedral vault. The air grew thick, heavy. The smell of wet soil and decay intensified. Then they saw it. A car. Old. Rusted. Covered in moss and fungus. As if it had been there for decades, fully absorbed into the vegetation. But Mateo swore it hadn't been there earlier. Inside the car, a man sat in the driver's seat, eyes open, unblinking. Mateo stepped closer. The man wasn't just sitting there. He was fused to the vehicle, skin bonded to upholstery, bone merging with rusted metal, as if the car had absorbed him. And where his face should have been, there was only absence, a hollow darkness that seemed to pull at Mateo's vision. Mateo ran. He never saw his friends again. Police searched the trail. They found the path, but no car, no body, no trace of the other hunters. The trail simply ended. Mateo was later admitted to a psychiatric facility. He never recovered. He spent his days staring into nothing, whispering about the road that eats and faces that aren't faces. In 2018, a government mapping satellite scanning the region detected a 19-square-mile area showing subtle topographic fluctuations, like the ground was shifting, pulsing. Scientists dismissed it as sensor error. Locals didn't. They knew. The road wasn't just moving, it was growing. And what it was swallowing wasn't just land. It was reality. Ruta del Olvido doesn't just take, it infects. What it leaves behind is a void that spreads, corroding memory, distorting perception, turning absence into something that feels alive. It was no longer confined to the asphalt. It was no longer contained. In 2019, the windshield notes escalated. They were no longer short, fragmented sentences about forgotten names. The messages became longer, more frantic, the handwriting increasingly illegible, like language itself was unraveling. One note found inside an abandoned SUV nearly 37 miles from Ruta del Olvido, an area previously untouched, read, "I don't know my name. I don't know why I'm here. The colors are wrong. The sound is far away. I'm coming apart. And something is watching me. From inside. It's emptying me. I'm not me. I'm what's left." The driver, a German tourist named Klaus Richter, was never found. His passport and wallet were still in the center console. But in the glove compartment, police discovered something worse. A voice recorder. The final recording was 17 minutes long. For the first 10 minutes, Klaus described the landscape enthusiastically. The mild weather, the beauty of the Andes, his plans for the day. His voice was calm, excited, alive. At 10 minutes and 32 seconds, his tone shifted. "It feels like I'm forgetting something important. I can't remember what I was going to do today. There's fog in my head." At 12 minutes, he began repeating himself. "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Where am I? Who am I?" Panic crept into his voice. At 14 minutes, he started crying, a dry, broken sob. "I can't remember my family's faces. They're blurry. Everything's blurry." At 16 minutes, his voice dropped to a whisper. "It's here. It's inside. It's emptying me. It's erasing me. I'm not me. I'm nothing." At 16 minutes and 58 seconds, the recording ended, not with a scream, not with impact. With a tearing sound, like something being ripped apart. But it wasn't paper. It sounded deeper, organic, like something fundamental being pulled loose. Audio analysts couldn't identify the sound. Authorities labeled it an extreme psychological collapse. In 2020, reports of lost stretches became widespread. Drivers passing through the region claimed to lose hours of time. They would suddenly wake up behind the wheel miles ahead, with no memory of the journey in between. This wasn't ordinary amnesia. It felt as if that time had never existed. One well-documented case involved a family driving north from Buenos Aires toward Salta. As they passed near Ruta del Olvido, the father, who was driving, lost approximately 2 hours. When he came to, they were 50 miles beyond the last place he remembered. But what terrified them most was what their 8-year-old daughter Sofia said. During her father's blackout, she saw something in the back seat. "It was like a shadow," she said calmly. "But not a normal shadow, it didn't have a shape, and it was looking at me." Her parents dismissed it as imagination, but Sofia insisted. "It didn't have eyes, but I knew it was looking, and it was smiling. Not a happy smile, a hollow one." Weeks later, Sofia changed. She stopped playing, stopped talking, spent hours staring into space, with a faint smile that didn't belong to her. Doctors found nothing physically wrong. She is still alive. But her parents say their daughter never came back. In 2021, an independent research group led by former forensic psychologist Dr. Clara Mendoza set up camp about 12 miles from the road. They were convinced there had to be a rational explanation: geological anomalies, mass hysteria, environmental toxins. They installed night vision cameras, motion sensors, high-fidelity audio recorders. The first night, nothing. The second night, the motion sensors triggered. The cameras captured something. A figure, tall, thin, arms unnaturally long, moving between the trees with fluid, unnatural motion. It matched the silhouette from Elena's drawings, from the Vargas family photos, where a face should have been, only a dark cavity, a distortion that seemed to swallow light. It made no sound, left no tracks. It simply appeared and vanished. On the third night, the audio recorders captured a low hum, constant, coming from every direction at once, then whispers, indistinct. But Clara swore she heard her name repeated. "Clara, come." The next morning, Clara was different. She sat in front of the tent, eyes open, empty. She didn't speak, but she was writing, over and over in the dirt with a piece of charcoal. "I'm not me. I'm what's left. And they're coming. For all of us. They're emptying everything. There's nowhere to run." The team evacuated immediately. They abandoned the equipment. Clara was institutionalized. She still writes the same sentence. The other researchers never spoke publicly again. The void of Ruta del Olvido was no longer confined to the road. It was spreading, and it was coming. Ruta del Olvido isn't just a road. It's a threshold. And whatever lies beyond it doesn't just want memories. It wants existence itself. In 2022, under growing public pressure and a surge of disappearances that could no longer be dismissed, the Argentine government finally acknowledged the severity of the situation. An elite military unit, trained for hostile environments and extreme risk operations, was deployed to investigate. 10 men, all veterans. Led by Captain Ricardo Torres, a decorated officer who had faced combat zones around the world, they established a forward operating base roughly 3 miles from the road. Thermal cameras, infrared drones, seismic sensors. The first week, nothing, just wind, and that suffocating silence. During the second week, drone footage began capturing distortions, warping in the air, as if the atmosphere itself were trembling. Seismic sensors recorded a vibration, low, steady, like a heartbeat, but not human. Something deeper, something older. In the third week, Captain Torres authorized a reconnaissance patrol. 4 soldiers, body cameras active, encrypted radios. They stepped onto Ruta del Olvido at 2 p.m. For 30 minutes, routine observations, cracked asphalt, fog drifting unnaturally. Then Sergeant Morales spoke. "Captain, I can't remember what I had for breakfast. I can't remember anything from today." Torres immediately ordered them back, but it was too late. Morales began repeating, "I don't remember. I don't remember. His tone flattened, mechanical. Then Corporal Ramirez started screaming. My wife. I can't see her face. I can't remember her name. My kids, I don't know how many I have. The panic in their voices was unlike anything Torres had ever heard. He ordered them to abort, to run. Then, silence. Not radio failure, not static. Silence. A silence so complete it felt like sound itself had been removed. The body cameras transmitted a few more seconds. Morales stood in the middle of the road, staring at his hands as if they weren't his. Eyes open. Empty. The image shook violently. The camera fell. The final frame showed cracked asphalt. And in the corner, a shadow. Tall. Thin. Arms reaching. Where a face should have been. Only a hollow that seemed to pull at the screen itself. Then, the transmission cut. A rescue team reached the location within 15 minutes. No soldiers. No weapons. No equipment. No blood. Only silence. And the smell of wet soil. The military withdrew. Captain Torres was removed from command. Hospitalized. He stopped speaking. Stopped eating. 3 months later, he died. Official cause: multiple organ failure. Before his death, he left a note, written shakily with his left hand because his right wouldn't stop trembling. It's not a road. It's a mouth. And it's always open. Always hungry. Not for flesh. For us. For what makes us us. For memory. For identity. For existence. And what it leaves behind is silence. I can hear it now. Inside me. It's eating me. In 2023, the government declared Ruta del Olvido a permanent exclusion zone. Concrete barriers, warning signs, armed guards. The road was removed from official maps. But the barriers didn't stop it. Disappearances began occurring in villages 30, 40, even 60 miles away. The same pattern: confusion, amnesia, then emptiness, and the notes. They no longer appeared only on windshields. Now they showed up on front doors, on school walls, on bathroom mirrors. Always the same sentence. I don't know my name. I don't know why I'm here. Something is coming. Residents now report hearing the hum, low, constant, coming from inside walls, from beneath the ground. And when it grows louder, they feel it. Their memories slipping, their names unraveling, their identities thinning into something fragile and hollow. They know now. Ruta del Olvido is no longer contained. The something was never a creature, never a monster made of flesh. It was erasure, negation. The silence that swallowed Captain Torres wasn't the absence of sound. It was the absence of being. And what remains is silence. Not the absence of noise, but the absence of everything. A silence that breathes, that grows, that consumes. And it's coming for all of us. If you made it this far, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future cases. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Because what you heard today is still happening. Ruta del Olvido is still there, still breathing, still waiting. And maybe, just maybe, it's already closer to you than you think.